And welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. Today, we're talking about the breaking news around Terry McLaurin, as sources say that he has requested a trade. Next, we're going to be talking about day 7 of training camp for the Washington Commanders and the key standouts from today. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to hit that subscribe button, just like Jayden Daniels is going to be hitting Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, Zach Ertz, and many others for multiple touchdowns this upcoming season. And so in exchange for hitting that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Washington Commanders. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Washington Commanders Insider family as we talk nothing but Washington Commanders football. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it. And so if you've not got a chance to see the breaking news here, Terry McLaurin has requested a trade. And so this is what Ian Rappaport tweeted out here. He says that with negotiations stalled and Terry McLaurin holding in with no progress, the Commanders wide receiver has requested a trade, sources say. Also got a chance to see Mike Foria on NBC before the Hall of Fame game kicked off, and he said the same thing here. And so before we jump into it, just to be clear, at the time of this recording, have not seen anything from Terry McLaurin, haven't seen anything from the team. At this point in time, it's a bunch of insiders and just pretty much everybody reporting the same thing here, that Terry McLaurin has requested a trade. And so now looking at this second part, just really, the fallout or just really where things go from here. And so let's start with the impact, because I think that the impact is going to be felt on the field. And I also think that this is an impact to the front office, which we're going to talk about here in a moment. But let's start with the on the field stuff here. And so, look, I think that we can all agree that the Washington Commanders offense is going to be very good. I think that we continue to talk about Jayden Daniels. We continue to talk about him really evolving here in season 2. It sounds like that he's just comfortable. He's in control of the offense out there, understanding where he needs to go with his checks and things like that. And also, too, I think that the offense has gotten better. You got Deebo Samuel over there. I think that Jalen Lane is definitely going to be a player that is going to be impactful here. Talking about Luke McCaffrey and then Ben Sinnott and how good that they're looking coming into year 2. And then just from the running back standpoint, I've been talking about Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt, which is Bill, by the way. That's what they call him, so we'll start calling him that. And so Bill looks very good right now in training camp or whatnot. We'll see what happens when the pads come on. But bottom line is the offense definitely upgraded. You got Laramie Tunsil on that front line to go along with Josh Connolly Jr. Everything got better. And so I think that with Terry McLaurin, he's the guy that takes it over the top. I think that when you look at the potential of Deebo Samuel and then also to Terry McLaurin, I just think that they would give defenses just absolute nightmares, the way that they would stretch the boundaries and things like that and just force defenses to try to figure it out. And if you do try to lock them up or you are successful there, you still got to figure out how to stop everybody else, including JD5 back here, which is Jayden Daniels, and how he can be elusive. And so, I just think that this is where the biggest impact, you wonder in how that's going to work out. Like, I think that is the biggest thing, just looking at this from on the field. So I just want to be clear. The offense is going to be good, but they are much, much better with Terry McLaurin out there. Now, we don't know how this is going to play out. Look, he can request a trade. They can ultimately get to a resolution, which we will talk about that in a moment. But as of right now, he's still with the Washington Commanders. There have not been any statements made from Terry McLaurin or the team, and so we'll see how this plays out. But I think that this would be really just, I think, a huge miss, because you're looking at a guy that has not missed football games in 4 seasons. You're looking at a guy that was second in the league in touchdowns last season behind Jamar Chase with 13 to Jamar Chase's 17. And you're looking at a guy that once again found a way to get another 1,000-yard season. And so 5 straight for him. He's just been consistent for this franchise through the bad times and the good times here. And look, Terry McLaurin acknowledges the fans out there. So definitely a guy that I think still wants to be with the Commanders, but is absolutely frustrated here. And so impact there on the field and just what it could look like. Next, I want to talk about the situation with the front office here. And so this is impactful, in my opinion, because now this is going to, I think, challenge Adam Peters and the front office. I think that you're really going to really see now what the standard is going to be there, because I think that if this does happen with another player down the line, I think that this response is important, because when you look at talking about setting the standards for what it means to be a commander and everything else, like I think that the standards are also going to have to be set here in the front office as well. And so I think that with Adam Peters, and you look at his time in the NFL and the time that he spent with the San Francisco 49ers, and you look back at what they went through, because Deebo Samuel, I think that he's at times requested, for, I think, another contract with the San Francisco 49ers, if I'm not mistaken. Don't cover that team, but just going back and just remembering some seasons past. And then also, too, the latest stuff with Brandon Ayuk in that situation. And so, it's a franchise, talking about the 49ers, where you usually get like this whole, hey, we want to trade. And then, we were hearing like all these trade rumors and things like that, and a deal eventually got done. And so I'm hoping that this is what's going to happen with Terry McLaurin. Again, we will have to see what happens with this situation here, but I definitely think that there is some hurt feelings. And let's see, is it hurt feelings on both sides, or how this thing plays out here? But Terry McLaurin has been the guy that, again, I mean, he's easily, I think, a fan favorite, the way that he shows up on and off the field. And I just think that this would be tough, really a tough loss, man, if he ends up getting traded. So let's see what happens. This is the breaking news. Once again, you can pretty much find this everywhere. This is the tweet in which I saw this. And also, too, you can head over to NBC Sports there and check out what they had to say, too. And so next, I wanted to go ahead and jump into day 7 of practice here for the Washington Commanders, and just really looking at the standouts here. And so, starting with DQ and starting with what he had to say to the press here before practice, he was talking about wanting to go into red zone work, wants to go ahead and work on the 2-minute work as well. He was talking about like a point system that they have set up with this red zone work as well. So talking about that, and just really, talking about the focus and the expectation at the end of practice on these kind of things. And just really, you want to get into those moments essentially to where you can execute those in games. And so, again, just paraphrasing that. Then also, too, he talks about Tim McKay working his way back from a pec injury. So an update there. He talks about Laramie Tunsil. He talks about his consistency and discipline and how he's been huge for Josh Conley Jr. there. And he said that it was almost like Jayden Daniels, and then also to Marcus Mariota, and how they worked off each other last season. Talks about Mikey Samra still. And again, him kind of developing into a leader, which kind of goes into my video yesterday about him, that yes, he's been terrific as a player, just making plays and things like that. But man, he just seems like he's really starting to kind of evolve into a leader for this team. And so next, talking about Brandon Coleman, and then also too, talking about Jordan McGee and then Baptiste. He was like, these are some of the second-year players that he brings up in the press conference. And so he's talking about Baptiste with a good shape, talking about Jordan McGee really being a blitzer this year and how good he's looked. And so that was some of the insights here from Dan Quinn before practice. And so next, going into what Jayden Daniels had to say. And so Jayden Daniels, talking about playing situations and making them be just like games. And so this kind of goes into like practicing hard, right? So when you get to games, very simple for you. And so paraphrasing that, so playing those situations and really simulating those as much as possible, those in-game situations. And so next, talking about Deebo. And so he talks about him really having understanding of different coverages and routes. And so talking about that experience with working with Deebo. Then with Jalen Lane, he mentions that he's been quiet, but man, he's been willing to learn. And so we've been hearing some good things about Jalen Lane and things like that. Next, talking about Von Miller, he talks about Laramie Tunsil, Deebo, and he says that these are players that you see them on film and you see how good they are, but man, when you see them in person, it's different out there. So kind of talking about that, I think he was asked about players that have been better than what they've looked on film, and so he mentions those 3 out there. And then next, he talks about, just he feels more comfortable, understanding really what to do out there. And he was talking about, now he has a lot more tools, on his tool belt, so to speak. And so he knows, what's going on with these checks and things like that. So ultimately, just sounding like he's talking about more of a comfort level into year 2. And so those were some of the key takeaways from Dan Quinn and Jayden Daniels. And so next, I wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit here with the standouts today. And so starting with Bill, which is again Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. So from what I'm reading here on Commanders Wire, he continues to look good. And I just want to see what he's going to look like in pads. I think that if he can continue to look well in pads here and be able to get into these creases and then also to get out into the open field and look explosive off these one cuts and stuff like that, you're looking at a guy that potentially can be RB1. I have been saying that. I think for him, it's a marathon, right? It's not a sprint in the season. And so he just needs to get to RB3 status going into week 1. And I think that there's a real chance he might finish as RB1. And so next, talking about Luke McCaffrey. And so Luke McCaffrey saw a couple clips here on Commanders Wire. And so he's looking pretty good and sharp out there, catching some passes here from Jayden Daniels. Might definitely have to step up some more here, depending on what's going to happen here with Terry McLaurin. But once again, we're starting to see Luke McCaffrey look comfortable here in year 2, as a wide receiver. Next, talking about some other standouts today. And so going through here, it looks like that Austin Eckler and then Jeremy McNichols were able to get over, I guess, 4 bags as far as like a goal line drill I'm seeing. And so it was, coach lining up, these guys running at the bag and then hopping over it, simulating what it's like at the goal line and getting in there. So those guys were able to get up over the ladder there and get into the end zone. And so you land into a pad or whatnot. So that was cool to see there. Next, talking about just some other things here. And so Terry McLaurin was out there at practice signing autographs and things like that. And so just wanted to throw that out there. And so those are some of the key takeaways here from day 7 as the Washington Commanders continue to keep ramping it up here. And so going back here now to close out the episode and just back to this Terry McLaurin trade request, I think that it is going to be interesting how this thing plays out. Like I said before, from the impact on the front office, I think that for Adam Peters, this really could set the standard for how, this front office is going to operate moving forward if other players run into the same situation as they're having here with Terry McLaurin. And so to Terry McLaurin's credit here, the market has reset at this point in time with the wide receivers and things like that. I think we've hammered the numbers and stuff like that. And so we'll see how this ultimately plays out. He is, still at the building or whatnot from what we know at this point in time. And so there hasn't been, anything like that, as far as any changes and things like that, but we'll definitely report that as things come out. But right now, Terry McLaurin has requested a trade. So you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking about that. Also, too, let me know what you're thinking here with the key takeaways from day 7 of training camp. It's been pretty good so far for the Commanders. I think that both sides have been winning. I think from what I'm reading, you see that the secondary has been aggressive in getting picks. Sounds like the defensive line has gotten a lot better. I was reading there yesterday in the video that it seems that the defensive line has been winning in some of these running situations. And so I think that that's something that we'll find out a little bit more once we get into week 1. I've said week 1 to week 5, we can find out how good that run defense is. Jayden Daniels looking awfully comfortable here in year 2. And then next with Deebo Samuel, man, he's been tearing it up, man. So again, talking about him and just how he's looking comfortable in just the entire route tree here. And you can just tell that this team is going to use him in a lot of different situations. And so you guys let me know in the comments here what you guys are thinking. And as we always say, look, go Commanders, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.